So it's really fascinating when it comes to prescriptions and the experience I've had with my clients. Some doctors will prescribe SSRIs, benzos, other types of pharmaceuticals, and not provide or not mandate the therapy necessary to oversee these people. Oftentimes it's because of a lack of options within someone's network. You may get a prescription because your doctor feels like you need to be on this right now, and then you may be on a 4 to 6 month wait list for a therapist. So you are taking these mind-altering substances, even if they are legal, with no support.
Mindbend. Non-ordinary and extraordinary states of consciousness for Mindbend Creative.
Atara Oven, thank you for joining me on the Mindbend podcast.
Thanks for having me, Matthew. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So you and I connected at the Awakening of Consciousness conference here in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago now. It was the 4th iteration of that conference, and I've been going since the first time. It happened shortly after I moved out to Los Angeles, and I was covering it for Psychedelic Spotlight. And it's been interesting to see that particular conference sort of change and grow and shapeshift over these last 4 years, and I thought this last year's container in Highland Park was a really beautiful container. I always meet good people whenever I go, and I think that's a tribute to Bree and Paul, and they bring in good people. They bring good people, and so that part of it is undeniable. But when I walked into the conference, I was immediately greeted with the information that you had just delivered a really wonderful presentation on microdosing. And there was an emphasis there on the reality of people who are microdosing and coming off of prescription antidepressants at the same time, or there's a consideration of prescription antidepressants and the relationship between the two efforts. And that's been something that I'm very interested in personally. I do not try to bring myself into the podcast a lot because my goal here, as we discussed, is to present information for people. It's for them. I get to learn as I go, but I don't ever make the show about my experience. I want the show to be applicable to as many people as possible who are listening or watching. So, but my interest was piqued, and I felt comfortable enough with you immediately to be able to just move into, you held space for me gratefully, in order to let me tell you kind of what was on my mind and ask some questions, right? And so it just made sense to share some of what we discussed and some of what we've discussed since then with the audience, because this episode is dedicated towards maximizing your microdosing protocol, getting the most out of your microdosing journey. And I think that a lot of the times that can be kind of a throwaway idea, but if you actually participate in this process with an intention and structure and a protocol, then you can really exponentially get an exponential return on the work that you're doing. So in the time that we have today, I would love to hear about the structure that you create as a guide, or you can clarify the official title too, but in the position that you're in, how do we create that structure? The variables from person to person, anecdotal experiences of things that have worked really well and things that there's been challenges, gauging outcomes and knowing how to set our expectations, and then the particular kind of follow through that is yours, because I feel like you're a very thoughtful and thorough person, and I think that this is a world, a health consideration that benefits from thoughtfulness and thoroughness. So with all that said, I'd love for you to help us understand the containers that you build for people and what that process looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we only have an hour. I think we could chat about this for a few.
Yeah.
Overall, what I call myself in these spaces is a microdose coach. There are a plethora of other things, such as prep and integration for heroic doses and ceremony work. The talk that I had at Awakening was called Bridging SSRIs and Psychedelics, a New Perspective to Mental Health. I know some of our chat was about that and just microdosing in general, so would love to give your audience just a full breadth of what is out there in the space, what to be looking for, green flags and red flags when they're speaking to other coaches, facilitators, trainers. To your point, it goes by many different titles. It's really about the energy that you feel with someone. When someone finds interest in what I'm doing, I start them off with the discovery call. It's usually about 20 or 30 minutes, and it's essentially just a vibe check. I recommend before working with anyone to have that vibe check. It goes with friendships and dating and anywhere else that you're looking to build intimacy in a relationship. And I don't necessarily mean romantic intimacy. I mean a place where two people feel secure and safe to open up and authentically be themselves. Through that discovery call, it's a little bit about Q&A, not really so much about the overall medicine or modalities that we're working into, but just a brief understanding of who the facilitator is, who you are. What's really important to identify when having a discovery call with a potential coach is, do they understand your goals, your expectations, and do you feel that they are someone that can hold the space for you to move yourself through what you're working through? A coach or a healer should not be promising any outcomes. They should not be projecting any of their own worldly experiences. It is a place to share what is possible. And if you feel that you can surrender and drop into that place with that individual throughout your time together, which is called a container.
Yeah. I appreciate that right from the start. It seems like, again, like I said, it's not a throwaway effort. There is a degree of intimacy that's necessary in this process if you are to embark upon it with the assistance of a coach. And I like the term coach too, because I don't know, sometimes it feels like it could be a little extravagant to consider anybody like needing their own coach in anything in life, but it happens. Sometimes you need it, and coaches are available, and coaches can be of tremendous benefit to people in any number of pursuits. But in this space, I love the idea of a microdosing coach specifically. Coach implies that it's a process. Coach implies that there's teaching as well, right? And I think that some people are going to find it easier to be open to lessons and much less the intimacy necessary to help create in order to absorb lessons. So I like that term. I'm glad that that's what you've settled on.
Yeah. Sometimes also cheerleader, accountability buddy. When it comes to language and comes to past experiences, a lot of words can hold a lot of weight for a lot of different people. And as they navigate that space, them knowing what words resonate with them and don't, and when someone comes to a word that they like or don't like, just observe it. So I love that coach resonates with you. If there's someone out there and coach doesn't resonate with them, reframe it. You have an opportunity to have agency to choose the word that works right for you and bring that into the space. And a good coach will be able to implement those words where necessary when speaking with you.
Yeah. So do you have a playbook that you coach from?
I have a benchmark where I start the majority of people off. And then through their observations of self, we tweak it so everything is customizable. Everyone's process really is unique at the end of it.
What kind of microdosing are we talking about?
We can microdose anything. Some of my specialties are psilocybin and LSD. And then people have also come to want to microdose other things. And I help navigate how to find the right coach for that. So anyone who is interested in speaking with me, it's never a no. It is yes and. And then introducing them to a wider network that can help them with other microdosing needs.
If you're not familiar with the concept of microdosing, psilocybin specifically in this instance, that's probably where we'll focus the majority of our attention for this conversation today, because I do have the impression, after working in the space for some time, that it might be one of the most common psychedelics that are microdosed. I think it probably is the leading, without much doubt, psilocybin, wouldn't you say?
I would, and because it's so accessible. And I don't just mean on the market, I mean to grow.
Yeah.
If we want to go back to ourselves, we can be growing our own pharmacy at home. Mushrooms grow really easy in dark, dry places like under beds and in closets.
Yeah.
And so depending on where someone's healing journey takes them, again, the process really is about agency.
Yeah.
And doing what's right for you and knowing that you have control in the dose and the space and the time. And part of that agency can also be growing your own medicine.
Okay, so someone has read an article or they've seen something on a podcast like this, or they've had a friend that's done it and they've suggested it to them. Like if they find your information and there's a connection that's made, they say, I was referred to you, a friend who had heard of you, they had done microdosing of psilocybin, and I'm thinking about it for myself. You spoke about flags, red and otherwise. What might be some very initial first impressions of people that can help steer your course of action?
Yeah, so a question I like to start off with is, what brought you to the medicine? If they share that a friend let them know that this was something that they should look into, I'd ask them to tell me more.
Yeah.
My friend could tell me to listen to a new band. Doesn't mean I'm going to listen to it. Maybe I fall in love with it. It is getting quiet and listening to people tell us stuff all the time, but why did I decide to go in this direction? Why did my friend tell me that? Why did he tell me that? And why did that resonate with me for me to have this conversation? So there's a lot of mirroring that goes on in these discovery calls to get to the real root of what are you here for? And I say, where are you here for? Because I don't want to say, where are you trying to fix or where are you trying to heal? Life is a healing journey. I like to say that people who go through microdose containers, you are looking to change 1% of your life within that container. That 1% could be a massive shift. It could be a ripple effect, but expectations, it's 1%. And sometimes 1% can sound really small, but also 1% can be really big when you think of your lifetime and working on 1% at a time. So something similar in ceremony or heroic doses of something like ayahuasca, which is how I started my plant medicine journey. There's a saying that an ayahuasca experience could be up to 20 years of therapy. That doesn't mean that your entire life of 20 years of therapy is going to be fixed overnight. It means that it may take you and a therapist 20 years to get to the root of 1% of your issues, or 1% of your healing journey that needs to be reframed. And that 1% can take place in these tighter, more concentrated containers.
We're talking about the difference between the macro journey and the microdose itself. What sticks out just fundamentally as the main difference?
The intensity of time. If we were to use a term that maybe the more general public would know of, like with a legal substance, if I was to refer it to alcohol, a ceremony is like a shot, where a micro container is more like a glass of wine or a beer, and talk therapy would be a non-alcoholic beer.
Okay.
Right? Like there's still some alcohol in it. You'll need a lot more if you're trying to get to a point of a mind-altering experience.
Yeah. So if they say that they understand that they are dealing with something and it's a lifetime experience, we could go down one of two routes potentially in our conversation now. Maybe someone comes to you and says, I have been taking a medication throughout my life and I no longer want to or feel that it's effective for me, or I have just made a decision to try to do something different. They could be coming from a background like that where they've endeavored to do work in a very different form. Or they could be coming to you from never having taken anything before, be it a legal antidepressant or any other kind of consciousness-altering substance towards working through something that they find is challenging. Are those two distinct, then, courses of action, or are they more similar than disparate?
The content in the container is similar. The dosing and the amount of sessions is different. So again, starting everyone off at baseline benchmark, 3-month container, every other week appointments. Again, this is about agency, growing. So you go home and you have some homework. Again, if homework's a triggering word, you have an assignment. Again, we work to figure out what language works best for you. Mm-hmm. But you have time to really work into that exercise for the 2 weeks. That's if we're just doing a regular microdose container. If we are tapering someone off of SSRIs, that would be a session every single week for those 12 weeks.
12 weeks for both persons, meeting every other week for the non-medication titration microdoser, meeting every week with the medication titration microdoser. So it's a difference of half the exposure to 1-hour sessions with you.
And also what that dosing looks like.
Okay.
And what that protocol looks like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're actually advising on dosing.
I am. And I work with their doctors and their therapists, whoever is their prescriber. So it's also an open conversation that they need to have if they are looking to move off of SSRIs and their doctor or therapist isn't someone who wants to taper them off. That's also a really good opportunity to reflect if this is still the person you want to be working with in the medical realm. Then there are other people who their doctors or therapists don't want anything to do with psychedelics. And then that's another conversation that we have. So I do also hold space for people whose therapists aren't interested in these types of modalities. But I also work with them on how to have that conversation with their therapist, because the relationship that you need to have with anyone that you are building intimacy with is trust and transparency.
So you've actually been introduced by the microdosing client to their psychiatrist or their primary care provider?
Yeah.
And what does that process look like? Because that's a fascinating space to me, to fuse these worlds together. I would imagine, like you alluded to, there's a contingent of professionals who have a willingness, and there's some who are staunchly not going to have a willingness. So tell us about that space and navigating that and showing up for that and kind of what you've learned by engaging these individuals.
Yeah, so my relationship is always with the client first. And so we come up with boundaries and agreement on what will be spoken about, what type of information can be transferred between the two parties. And that's a document that we sign. A lot of relationships I get into, they come with documents. It can look black and white or sterile or corporate, but I think there's also an act of love when we're putting something into writing and making it tangible and setting clear expectations. A lot of rupture in any relationship comes from a lack of understanding, a lack of expectations, and a lack of boundaries. And when we're moving into a space, especially in mental health, safety is the first thing. The reason why a person got here is because somewhere in their life, they were feeling unsafe and insecure.
Yeah. So when you're connected with a physician who's willing to talk to you about what you're undertaking, how deep does that conversation go? How much time is spent there? I know it probably varies from practitioner to practitioner, but can you give us a general picture of what that process is like?
Yeah, so it really depends on that practitioner. It can be anywhere from, we do about like 15, 20-minute calls. We kind of keep things that are under billable hours.
Yeah.
That's also really important. So a lot of corresponding through email. However, with some patients, they do pay for the first billable hour for myself and their doctor to connect, depending on the situation.
So it's email, and I would imagine it's pretty cut and dried. It's like, this is what I'm planning on working with client. this is kind of how I would describe it to you, and this is what I'm recommending, knowing their background. Can you validate for me that this is indeed the medication that they've been on, this is indeed the duration that they've been on? And do you ever get into, what are your observations about this person? Do you think they're ready to be coming off of their medication? Or how personal does that get?
So it's really fascinating when it comes to prescriptions and the experience I've had with my clients. Some doctors, like white coat doctors, will prescribe SSRIs, benzos, other types of pharmaceuticals, and not provide or not mandate the therapy necessary to oversee these people. Oftentimes, it's because of a lack of options within someone's network. You may get a prescription because your doctor feels like you need to be on this right now, and then you may be on a 4 to 6 month wait list for a therapist. So you are taking these mind-altering substances, even if they are legal, with no support, unless you book another appointment with the doctor who wrote that prescription, and that's not their specialty, to sit down with what you're actually going through. They are just prescribing that Band-Aid in the meantime. For others, with therapists, they like to talk and they like to listen. So there's a little bit more of a dialogue there, but we are talking about what are you guys currently working on in your sessions? Here are the observations I've made. Here may be some new topics that I think are more underlining. One thing I've noticed with a lot of my clients is the stuff that they've been working on in therapy has plateaued. And then the questions that I start asking, they're like, oh, we've never worked on that. We've never considered that. So even just the two lenses in the two different schools of thought bring up different topics within the individual, which helps them in this new container that they're in with me.
Yeah, the therapists are more willing to talk. That's not too terribly shocking, but it's got to be an interesting space to get into, where some of them might be more prone to share like anecdotal experience or ask you questions also too, and some are probably more like the GPs that are just kind of keeping it cut and dried. So if we have connected with a client,
and I would like to add, when I say talk, it's not like two parents talking about a kid.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. It's about someone's safety and someone's progress and like their success. And so it is just flagging the other person if there's like a watch out or something that's coming up, and we're looking to collaborate together based on all of our knowledge, because one person can't hold it all, to help support that individual. And then those conversations are then relayed to the client. They are treated like an adult. So even if we're having a side conversation, I bring transparency of that conversation back to the client so they can feel like they're fully part of that process and still have agency in the recommendations.
Yeah, that's great to know. I'm glad you added that, because I could imagine that someone could feel vulnerable to have people talking about them, even if they understand fundamentally that it's towards the same goal. So if you've identified a client who is willing to connect you, and it's probably mandated that they connect you with their care providers, if there's a medication cessation component, you do have to, you make it part of your practice where you have to speak with the provider. Is that right?
It's recommended.
Okay.
And if they are working with a provider that isn't interested in this connection or these types of modality, I have that conversation with the person coming to me. Are they still the right fit for you?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? People are in our lives for a reason, a season, or forever. And often therapists and coaches, including myself, we are there for a reason or a season. And we need to know when to let go and to step into that next container. So that doesn't necessarily mean I'm saying leave your therapist and go to a coach. But if you have a therapist and that is a great support system, but they are currently not providing what you need as you evolve, it may be time to go find another one who's ready to take that next step with you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying. So you've got someone and you're ready to begin together. So let's talk about what that work looks like from the onset. Once you've got your approval and your not necessarily approval, but your kind of your consensus that this is how we're proceeding and the right oversight is being undertaken, like how do we get off the ground?
So after that discovery call, the next call is a medical intake from my side of things. Then we'll have that conversation with the therapist, and then we move into our 5 more sessions. So we've got another 10 weeks together at that point. The discovery call and the medical intake, there are already questions and thoughts that have been planted that people will start journaling about. And then they bring that 2 weeks of recorded data or what they've observed or what has come up into the session with us, and then we start going through that. So we start with a 2-hour intention setting. I'm really big on intentions. I could geek out about the science and the spirituality behind a good sound intention and the frequency that has in healing. And once that intention is set, we break it down into what the next 2 to 3 months looks like. And so we take it chunk by chunk, just like you take life day by day, step by step. And we really let the intention go down into the depths of the person and bring up to the surface what needs to be addressed. And so then we create that structure of what every week or 2 weeks, depending on if we're tapering off or just a microdose container, is going to have like an overall focus on. But then what the individual comes to me with every week or 2 weeks, we build those nuances into the lessons.
What they come to you, you mean challenges that arise?
Yeah.
Or revelations as well?
Sure.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Whatever's potent for them right now.
Okay. So it may have, you may start with a different idea of what the intention is going to sort of bring about, and then due to life circumstances or whatever, it can alter, and you just kind of go where it goes.
We flow. Yeah. You hear that a lot in spirituality, being in flow state.
Yeah.
And when on microdosing and we're opening up neuroplasticity, we want to walk the walk. And so when we have the opportunity to flow and pivot, we want to be able to do that.
Okay. So it's every 2 weeks for the standard microdosing container, every week for the medication cessation container. And we've just begun, and you alluded to journaling.
Yes.
This is homework.
Depends. It can be homework. It can be an exercise. It can be an experiment. Again, with the language, depends on what the individual feels most motivated to complete for themselves. So the first 2 weeks, I work on ritual journaling and setting their space to move into this container. So like small assignments might be like, what's one area of your house that you've been putting off and you haven't cleaned? Is that your desk? Is that a closet? Is there a place in your home that just feels heavy? Is it, for me, the last time I did this exercise on myself, it was the trunk of my car. It's really hard to use a trunk when it's full of things, right? And so you have 2 weeks to start your journal. All you have to do is like 1 entry a day in it. Clean a place that's holding more energy, and how do we come into this next place feeling lighter? It's really, the medicine is working in the background. If we're not talking about tapering someone off, we are just opening up their universe and we are cleaning things out. You can't move things in yet until you've really assessed your environment. So it's kind of like a spring cleaning. We come in, we see where you want to plant a new garden. We look at your intention, and then we move into what feels like flow for you.
Is there a methodology that you've arrived at for the duration of your work with someone based on the duration of their history and taking a particular medication? I have heard many different things about what a titration schedule should or could look like wildly varying suggestions as to what the right time frame is, depending on the medication itself, the dosage of the medication, and the duration of the time on it. So how do you go about setting what that, I mean, does your schedule, is it always a 3-month container regardless, or how does that work?
So it's always a 3-month container.
Okay.
And depending on the situation, there may be 2 containers. So it could go up to 6 months.
I see.
I have found that anyone who needs more than 6 months, they are still holding on to something and they're not ready to let go of that part of their identity. And so microdosing isn't for them. In that time, right? Because we are constantly evolving and changing.
If they're unable to do what by the end of 6 months?
So if someone's looking to taper off of an SSRI,
Uh-huh.
and it is more than just the physical addiction.
Okay.
The physical addiction, we've been able to move people off within the 3 months easily.
That's encouraging news.
There is also a psychological and emotional attachment to things that people have had in their life for a really long time. There's a grieving process. Even if it's a toxic relationship, it was still a relationship. There was still intimacy there. There was still something there witnessing you. There was still something in the room as you move through all of those things. And I say witnessing, it doesn't mean they were witnessing the best version of you. I'm not saying they were there to support you, but they were there. It was a part of the individual for an extensive amount of time. And so there is also a letting go of that relationship, and that needs to be handled with care for those who have tied up their constructs and their identity to being a person who is on this medication. And so when that tie is there, it doesn't necessarily mean bring in something new and shiny. And there's obviously the neuroplasticity and other things that are going on to help people move away from there. But sometimes we don't want something new. Sometimes we just want to sit in the human experience of a relationship that we have. And that space needs to be held as well. And so I also do have clients that aren't on psychedelics, aren't microdosing, but they may be moving towards a place to get mentally and physically and spiritually ready to move into that space for themselves.
Do you have, is there a nutraceutical or nutrition component to the work that you do also? Are you recommending supplements like amino acids or other supplements that also inform a person's physiology as they go through this process? Is that part of what you do?
Yeah, and I work with other people to help really get into exactly what that individual needs.
Okay.
And it also depends on their diet, but lifestyle, right? So like as we are moving an individual to evolve into the 1% that they want to be, that has to do with sleep hygiene, has to do with their lifestyle and their habits and their relationships. And it's really putting a lens on everything that makes up the human experience and coming to terms with, are you in alignment with that? And if you're not in alignment with that, that's okay, but are you consenting to it?
That's part of the coaching.
Yeah.
The coaching is another brain and another set of eyes, another heart and spirit on a person's life.
Yeah.
Are the things you're doing during your waking hours, the things you're doing at night, are they in alignment with the goal and the intention that we have set for you, and you are able to help point out places where you find incongruities?
Exactly. And the microdosing is a third person on our team, right? Myself, the individual, and the spirit. And how can we all be there to support you?
Can you talk more about that spirit? Can you talk more about that magical thing in the room What's happening there in your experience? Where is this wisdom, guidance, and effort coming from?
Yeah, so I consider an ancient technology, something around before cell phones and devices and everything else.
And talk therapy.
And talk therapy, right? Even before we knew how to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
There was fungi and other plants and bushes and trees and things that have medicinal properties to give back to us, to help us connect and come home to nature and who we are. And that's really, especially in Western society, what I'm doing air quotes, but like healing is about. It's coming back to ourselves before we knew something was bad or ugly or traumatic. We're coming back to our innocence, and the spirit helps remind us of where we came from. So psilocybin, magic mushrooms in particular, is what's known as a grounding medicine. Just like the mycelial network is rooted into the ground, and that is what we say the spirit does for us. It roots us back into the ground.
There's nothing like it metaphorically, is there? It seems like the mushroom specifically and the nature of a lot of these organisms and the reality of the mycelial network and the unique and profound ways that those organisms communicate. There's no better metaphor for what we could hope to bring to ourselves in a healing journey, because a lot of it is about the way this thing communicates, like in an integrated or disconnected fashion, right? When we're in optimal health and wellness, things are communicating. I did a podcast once with Jason Estes, who is a quantum person, and he said that in his life there are signals and resources, and we don't think about how when we ingest something, it's actually not just the thing itself doing something, but it's creating a signal and response action, right? And it's a pretty powerful technology that has millennia of experience with communication, highly efficient communication. And so your efforts to be communicative and to set up this clear communication, I feel like is right in line with this particular modality. What does it look like for LSD? Because LSD is kind of a different creature, and I've heard some fascinating things recently about metaphorically for LSD versus psilocybin. Can you speak to some of the differences in the protocol and the process when it's a microdosing of LSD? Yeah,
so the protocol is very similar. There are some well-known ones out there, like a Stammet stack or a Fadiman. Fadimans was originally created for an LSD protocol. Mushrooms.
Oh, Fadiman was created for LSD ahead of psilocybin?
Yes.
Okay.
Someone can fact check me on that.
Okay.
And so Fadiman is 1 day on, 2 days off.
Yeah.
And then Stammet, it's changed over time, 3 to 4 days on, 2 to 3 days off. I prefer Fadiman. I think it is important for us to clear our receptors and not to need too much support from the medicine. The medicine's really there just to provide a hand on the back, At
the microdosing
level.
Which is meant to be subperceptual, but I want to drill down into that concept with you a little bit further too, but I'll let you finish your thought.
Yeah. So a lot of my clients do start on Fadiman. There is a time where Stamets does come into my practice as well. Again, everything is so nuanced based on where the person is coming from and where they want to go. LSD and psilocybin. So I consider psilocybin a feminine energy, grounding, nurturing, the scenic route on a long drive. LSD to me is more of a masculine energy, very AB energy, really gut feeling. You can make quick and decisive decisions. So depending on, I could have 2 clients come to me with the exact same intention. But depending on what type of support they need in their life, someone may need a more feminine energy, a more grounding, hey, look around you, be curious, consider why something is happening, versus someone else with the same intention at that moment in their life may need a more masculine energy, which is, we really need to move through this consciously. And how can I trust my gut to make the right decisions? Because right now I don't have the space to consider the who, what, why, and how. But I want to be in alignment with the decisions that I'm making that are in with the best intentions for myself and those around me.
So there are people that come to you with the idea that they're going to embark upon a psilocybin microdosing journey, and you recommend LSD instead?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's an education piece. And at the end of it, I can't stress enough the amount of agency my clients have. And so if I recommend one thing and they prefer something else, we're going to go with that. I trust that the medicine is also speaking through them before you even ingest it. We say that when you sign up for the medicine has already begun. And so we will move with that. On a microdose level, these medicines are so safe that a couple weeks in or 3/4 in, we can also change it. If someone really wanted to start with psilocybin, because even if LSD, based on my recommendation, could lead them where they want to go, this is where they feel safe. And I want to honor their safety first.
Mm-hmm. When a person doesn't feel safe, when that comes up, can you speak to what that looks like when, if it ever does come up? Like where does the feeling of not being safe come from? Is it more present at the beginning of a session and it dissipates over time, or can it be stoked because of circumstances that are encountered during the process? Like, talk about that safety concern, because one might go into the process feeling brave and ready and excited, and then there could be things that would make them feel less so over time. But can you speak to when that has occurred or how to mitigate that?
And more specifically, are you speaking of microdosing altogether or coming into a session?
I think a person's own sense of, I'm going to be safe in this, and anything that could throw them from that.
Yeah, so the first day of any protocol should be on a day where someone doesn't have work, where they're not expected to be anywhere at a certain time. Don't recommend going out to a barbecue with your in-laws. No tough conversations. The ability to move out of energy that doesn't align with you that day. So being by yourself in nature, reading, a farmer's market, somewhere spacious for that first dose, just to get a feeling to put you in safety, that if the dose was too high, that you would have all the resources that you needed to support you in that. Mm. And to go back to, I guess, dosing, right? And what is a microdose?
Yeah. And let's tilt towards subperceptual in that concept as well. So you can tell our audience a microdose is generally considered to be
a subperceptual dose. If you feel it, it's too high. It's not a microdose if you feel it.
And when we talk about like setting up the setting of the experience and no inflammatory conversations and no rush hours or deadlines if possible, which isn't always, it's hard to get to sometimes for a lot of people. But if we're able to carve out that space, it's interesting because why would you need to take so many considerations for a subperceptual experience like that you're not going to notice anyway? But
with your first dose, again, we start at a benchmark. And when I say start at a benchmark, especially for dosing, that doesn't necessarily mean everyone starts at the same dose. But in my practice, there are a couple different categories of where someone could land into that dosing, and that is where they start. So someone's microdose could be anywhere from 50 milligrams to 250 milligrams. There are some people rare, but some that are up to 400 milligrams.
For a microdose.
For a microdose, right? And that is based on other medications or experiences or energy blocks that they have in their life. An average is usually around 1 to 150. My microdose is 75 milligrams. I'm on the lower end. And so it really depends on where someone is in their healing journey, what their lifestyle is like, and what their experience is with knowing themselves.
You recommend the microdose dosage. That's something that you actually say, this is what I recommend for you, based on what you've told me about yourself and the conversations I've had with other care providers?
Yes. And then you'll have that first dose on a easy breezy day.
Yeah.
And then you'll report back if you feel it or not. If you don't feel it, we're going to keep going with that dose for up to 3 doses before our first dose check, which is kind of a half-hour check-in on how has that first week and a half gone. If you have felt it, we know we can now taper it back, because your next dose, you're not going to have that same controlled environment that you've set up for yourself.
The next dose would be on the protocol that you're typically following 2 days later?
It would be the 3rd day, but yeah. 2 days later. So that would put you usually on a work day.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay, so someone begins the process and they say, I didn't necessarily feel anything. So what is the work that's going on during that next call? Yeah,
so Western society, especially in like celebratory situations, which is often when we are taking mind-altering substances, there is a correlation between feeling something and it working.
Absolutely.
And so part of this process is also destigmatizing how quiet can we get to go within, to hear and feel what's been going on all the time that we may have been ignoring or bypassing or sedating with other mind-altering things. And so with a lot of clients, that is the first hurdle. What is it like to heal without feeling? What is it like to experience life without the expectation of knowing something is going on for your greater good?
That's not a conversation that we ever really have with our general practitioner, is it? We don't get to carve out that kind of space. And I think it's rarely a conversation that we get to have with people that love us in our families or even in relationships. Like that's really a unique line of dialogue that could be had with someone that's doing the kind of work that you're doing, I think. So what are people coming back and saying to you as marked, journaled differences that they're reporting, and how soon into the process, be it someone who's on the medicine titration, combining bridge into microdosing, and those who are just strictly in a microdosing container? Can you speak to some of the anecdotal moments of sharing that indicate the work that you want to see occurring?
Yeah, so I call it a cycle. If we're going by Fadiman, 1 day on, 2 days off. So those 3 days would be considered one cycle. So after 3 cycles, I do that that dose check-in. And within that first week and a half, people may report back, I didn't feel anything, and I don't know if my life's different. And then I'll start getting curious. Well, did you have any worse days? Did anything happen to trigger you? Did you observe those triggers? Someone may then express, something did piss me off, and I did take a moment to reflect on it. Oh, I guess I don't normally do that. I normally just react. Or, no, I don't know, this week was pretty easy. Maybe I just got lucky this week. And so there is a lot of disbelief and the client having to prove to themselves, that this is or isn't working? Again, without something smacking us across the face, how do we know it's there? And so this is also part of the healing. This is part of the journey, is starting to track in the journal the patterns that we see. And just is life getting 1% easier? And easier doesn't necessarily mean, I don't want to use the word better, but it doesn't necessarily mean, what it means is you're being 1% more aware.
Okay.
And in those moments of awareness, we can choose to move in alignment if we feel that we're out of alignment. And the more we are in alignment, the better our lives will be.
If you do a YouTube search on SSRI cessation specifically, to come back to this particular point, a lot of what comes up is physical symptoms and risks of dangers involved in, etc. So over the time that you've been doing this, can you speak to what you're seeing with regards to physical experience of the titration and the cessation and weathering that storm?
Yeah, so some really positive stuff that we've recorded is if people are experiencing nausea or headaches on their medication, the microdosing will help that subside. And just think, if you're having a physical ailment and that goes away, feeling 1% better is also giving you the strength to move away from this old identity of being on this medication. And so it's propping us up to move into a place where we're already feeling safer.
So to clarify, you're saying that headaches and nausea experienced as a side effect of the titration itself?
Usually of the SSRI.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. What if someone has taken it and isn't experiencing nausea but is contending with typical side effects of
that may also come
cessation?
with the titration, right?
Yeah,
There
yeah.
is a physical dependency
Yeah.
that these medications have, and therefore the withdrawal symptoms can be the same withdrawal symptoms as anything else. And so the microdosing is there to support, along with like amino acids and magnesium and some other things that we would recommend for them, to help support their nervous system and other parts of their body while they are transitioning. There is still going to be a learning curve, but it is, how do we put the person in the driver's seat, that they're fully consenting, that they have agency, that they have curiosity. It is a lot easier to take an uncomfortable situation when we become the observer of what's going on and we get curious. It's less about why me or poor me, and more about, I am strong enough and I have the support to move me through something that I've been really wanting to move through for a while.
As the coach or cheerleader, you're the person that is very strategically, very meticulously helping the person find that agency, become empowered through language, through practice, through supplements, through mindfulness, through journaling, using tools. You're really providing a set of tools to have a different engagement with a physiological, spiritual, intellectual challenge, this transition, this work.
Yeah, and these tools that we are honing in this exercise, you then get to keep for the rest of your life.
Not a bad deal.
Yeah.
So after the end of the first 3-month container, what can a person expect to have occurred potentially if they're microdosing psilocybin or LSD, either just doing that alone or with the medication cessation component involved? What do we look to be different at the end of that 3-month period?
So going back to the intention, One thing to note and to underscore about psychedelics and just a healing journey, this can also happen in meditation and other modalities, breath work, anything that can move our mind into an altered state. When we are consenting to this expansion, a lot of shit can happen in our lives. And so there's also, I should have prefaced this at the beginning, but a real understanding of knowing what could shift in your life. And are you truly ready for those shifts? And so even through microdosing, it doesn't need to be a large dose. It doesn't need to be a ceremony dose. Through these 3 months, people may decide to quit their jobs. They may decide to move in a different direction with a partner. They may decide to mend a relationship. They may decide to move away from a relationship. They are essentially consenting to not just expanding, but in some moments, earth-shattering their life. And knowing that we are here to hold it so they can choose how they want to put it back together for the first time in their lives. When we think about it, our identities and life started before we could talk or walk. We needed people to help us. And that was our only view of the world, is what we were receiving. And then we moved into an age of also being able to give, but we could only give what we knew was possible, which often looked like what we were receiving. And now we're moving into a later stage in life, and people may feel that they are who they are. And we're giving them an opportunity to reset that button. And so a lot can happen during that time, even on microdosing.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, your life could look like your dream life, your life that you came into here with that vision of, or your life could also look like your dream life that you weren't able to envision until you had these tools and the space to get curious about all the opportunities that you could have. But again, going back to managing expectations, it's really about what is the most potent 1% that is going to change in your life, that is going to move you into a different trajectory of your next evolution.
In your opinion, just how profound is the work of microdosing?
In my opinion, when coming to the medicine humbly as a student who wants to learn, who wants to change, who's ready to do what it takes to become the person that they want to be, it's life-changing. But you get what you give, and the medicine meets you where you're at. So if you half-ass it, it'll half-ass it.
So if you have come to this conversation with a curiosity about microdosing, albeit there's a number of different things that can be microdosed, but whether it's psilocybin, LSD, or something else, I hope that some of the primary questions have been answered today, and some finer points have been, we've shined a light on some of the finer points and some of the interesting nuance that make this process so unique and make it so potentially profound and could warrant the relationship and the communication that comes with bringing in someone like yourself, a coach, a cheerleader, a guide, in order to maximize the experience. Because like anything else, there are so many factors that go into the whole ecosystem of wellness, of a good day, of a successful venture. And this is no different. This really, it can be, the success can be amplified, the takeaway can be maximized if we're thorough in our approach, and if we find an intimacy that allows for questions to be asked, considerations to be made, and that we believe both people are working with the same sincerity and commitment, because it really is a commitment.
It's a commitment. It's a commitment to yourself. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even though these types of modalities are becoming more popular, right? We get to talk about them on podcasts and in conferences and out in the world. Not everyone within someone's life is knowledgeable, accepting of these modalities. And so this is also a safe space for them to explore that. Also, there are people maybe in their lives who don't want them to change. So we're also helping them navigate and find language and tools and resources to realign themselves with who they are without their past dragging them back, to put them back into that box that they signed up to break.
I want to be respectful of your time, but as we alluded to at the beginning of the conversation, we could go on for many more hours, I think. But this is a snapshot of your work and of this space that I'm very grateful to have had the chance to visit with you about today. I'm sure there's going to be people with questions to ask, and I encourage that to happen. Are people allowed to reach out to you with questions based on this conversation, or questions about the work you do in particular, and how might they do that?
Yeah, my website is journeystate.co, so .co, and you can book a discovery call. And during that discovery call, it may be to work with me, but it may just be to ask me questions that you're interested in. And that's just a 20, 30-minute free call.
Atara Oven, it's been my pleasure to have you on the Mindbend podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for your time.